and welcome to the Giraffe Social Media Podcast. It's what social media managers are talking about. I'm Chloe Bellchamber, and on today's episode, I'm direct messaging entrepreneur and CEO of Klint Marketing, Taylor Ryan. We'll be discussing Taylor's impressive 12 years of marketing and startup experience, why organic reach has changed across platforms, and what successful growth hacking looks like on social media. But first, let me introduce you to today's guest. Welcome to the podcast, Taylor.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Where are you joining us from today?
I am from dismal and rainy Copenhagen, Denmark. It's been pouring just nonstop the last 2 days. But yeah, I'm at the home office because they're redoing the floors at our current office. So it's just a state of constant chaos right now.
Very exciting though, right? I'm super jealous that you are from Copenhagen, regardless of the weather. I would love to do that right now.
It's got some charms to it, yeah. Have you ever been?
I've been once for a brief holiday and I fell in love. It's one of my favorite cities I've been to. And yeah, nice. I can't wait to go back. Hopefully in summer next time, not winter.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, there's this hygge thing, which is, the whole kind of cozy atmosphere. But yeah, summer's so short out here. So I feel like every 3 months that you kind of get this just moment of like real living and you're outdoors, and then you go back to another 9 months of winter. It makes you really look forward to the sunny days, I guess.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. Well, Taylor, before we jump into things, I want our listeners to understand the caliber of your resume. You've got 12 years of marketing and startup experience. You're an international keynote speaker, an entrepreneur, and mentor, amongst many other things. Let's take a minute to walk through how you started your career in marketing and your journey to where you are now as a 6-time startup co-founder and CEO of Klint Marketing.
Sure. It's, I don't know if I sent you outdated stuff. It's actually 14 years, but who's counting? It's totally fine. I don't know where to begin, but I'll give kind of like the Cliff Notes version. I graduated at the height of the economic recession in 2008, the Great Recession, and that kind of put me on a crazy journey where nobody was hiring. And so the only way to really get real world experience, which I was so desperate to do, was join these small rinky-dink crazy operations and start getting into the world of startups, because in many cases, people are desperate for resources and desperate for people that just want to do cool stuff. So that was a good 14, 15 years ago. And I'm still going strong. I've been in Denmark for the last 6 years, and I've scaled 4 different companies as either the CMO or the head of marketing or the person leading the marketing from zero to exit. So I have 1 IPO, 2 acquisitions, and 1 merger over 5 years of just, crazy growth hacking and lots of work. And I'm running Klint. It's a digital marketing and growth hacking agency. We've been around for 2 years and almost 3 months. I also run growthsecrets.org, which is my online masterclass. I'm 9 months into building a software as a service tool that basically is all about buyer intent. Launching a few other crazy projects between here in the US within the crypto world. And it's, every day is something different.
Wow. It sounds like you've got like 3 lifetimes worth of experience, which makes me all the more excited to interview you today.
Cool.
So let's jump right into the bulk of today's episode, because we do have a lot to get through. I want to talk to you about the landscape of today's social media platforms, because there is this sense that the days of businesses succeeding through organic reach are behind us. But I want to know what you think.
I think it really depends on the platform, but let's just take like the more, I don't want to call it traditional, but the ones that most businesses are focused on, which is LinkedIn and Facebook. I do a lot of work within the B2B space. I would say every other word that I'm going to utter is maybe a contradiction depending on the nature of the business model and what your product or service is. But I do a ton of presentations on social media, and I think a lot of people overvalue, especially on Facebook and LinkedIn, the potential of organic growth. And the reality is, if you check out any companies, regardless of what success they have in terms of their annual recurring revenue or their amount of infusion of capital and what they've raised, the engagement on social media is abysmal. Like it is below 0.0002%. And, not to like name drop, but I do think it is interesting. If you check out Intercom, which is one of my favorite tools and has been for a while for inbound marketing, they have something to the effect of like 44,000 followers. And every post that you see there gets maybe 3 to 6 likes, which at that point, it's like you couldn't get your mom and the person actually doing the Facebook post and a few other employees to get involved. And the reality is no. So organic growth on these platforms is very difficult, if not damn near impossible. And I don't see that changing in the relative near future.
Mm-hmm. So how does growth hacking come into the equation then? It's something that I have seen everywhere that I kind of search your name in. What is it and how do we apply it to social media?
Cool. Am I allowed to use, let's just say, colorful language, or is this like a family-friendly podcast?
I mean...
Within reason, obviously.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay, cool. So like growth hacking is a bullshit jargon buzzword. It is basically another word for digital marketing. It's just people like to call themselves something else. It's like, I get it. It's a cute little way of sounding different. I'm not one of those guys. But the reality is there is a tactic or something about it that is kind of unique. My definition of growth hacking is doing the most with the least amount of time, energy, and effort in order to get the biggest results. I like to do things that are scalable. I refuse to do stuff that's manual unless there is a really strong indication that there is a major outcome that would make sense. So it's never a 1-for-1 approach. It's a 1 for 50, 1 for 1,000, 1 for 10,000. And I don't see a lot of, let's just call it the traditional marketers, adopting that way of working and thinking. And there's tons of studies out there that show this. It's basically 33% of a marketer's weekly hours are used on repetitive tasks. So my thought is, why not automate everything that can be and continue to do that across every type of channel, platform, medium, and any task that you're doing within marketing in order to have a better outcome overall. And to me, it's just putting in the time and trying to figure out what are the different ways of combining different things that haven't been combined before in order to get nicer, bigger results.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I want to also ask you about data, because I'm assuming this has a big role to play within these kinds of strategies. What are the best ways to leverage it within your marketing efforts?
I think everybody has like this weird, quirky thing of like, either you're okay with playing with some form of data, or you're like, no, I'm a bullshit artist. I'm a brander, storyteller, digital strategist. I don't actually touch the stuff. And I think that apprehension about getting your hands dirty will ultimately not serve those people in the long run. So yeah, I use data across all kinds of different plays. And like, let's just take social media, for instance. If I'm competing and I'm a challenger product, let's say I'm selling a CRM client retention management solution, like a competitor to Salesforce. Salesforce is like the known standard within the market. If I'm able to scrape the engagement off of, let's say Salesforce puts out lots of webinars, or maybe they have a post that they promoted and it gets lots of engagement, then I'm able to scrape every person that is engaged with that, whether it's a like or a comment, and automate some form of outreach to say, hey, I know that I saw you over there and you love whatever they're doing over there, but it might be interesting. We offer this, this, and this at a far more reasonable price, and we can get you this result within this amount of time. And I can automate pretty much every step of that. And I don't know why more people aren't doing it. I guess it's just they either haven't seen it or they're like, oh, that couldn't possibly work. And my response would be, well, then how come it's working for me and all of my clients? So I don't know. I see so many different avenues of being able to hit different channels using a lot more scalable stuff that requires a little bit of touching on data. And yeah, the outcomes are exponential. It's a very different way of working, and most people are afraid of touching new stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I guess for the people who aren't using this, maybe because they haven't discovered it, maybe they are afraid to get their hands dirty, what should these business owners be prioritizing to get what we call explosive growth?
Yeah. Well, that is a tricky question because you actually have to kind of turn the mirror towards yourself. So, it's one of the bigger challenges. I did this presentation for Falcon. They're a big social media publishing platform. And I was one of the last speakers to come on board because nobody wanted to touch the murky area of how to show ROI and forecast for social media. And that sucks. It's not the sexy or exciting part of being a social media manager or putting together awesome content. It's the numbers. So one of the things that I broke apart at the very early part of this presentation was we should be putting an equal amount of focus in terms of the percentage of where we're getting our most, revenue or the biggest impact. So if I only get 5% of my leads from social media, I should not be spending 30%, 40%, 50% of my time on it. That's that's reality. And I don't understand why people are like, yeah, but we got to show people and like you can't measure some stuff. And it's like, no, I definitely can. I can 100% measure it. And the problem is, I think there's this weird version of ourselves. It's like, yeah, but this used to work all the time. And it's like, cool, doesn't anymore. And if I can show some form of attribution to basically say, there is no reason that if we're only getting 5% of our total revenue from this channel, that we need to continue to push resources into it, that creates a little bit of discomfort. And that's one of the things that I often try to get either, stakeholders, CEOs, or just founders to understand. And I think half the time they get it. There's kind of this fighting, this intuitive response. It's like, yeah, but everybody says it's a big deal, and it is. But yeah, focus on the stuff that makes you money.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it is the same with social media, right? People think they need to be on every single platform, but just stick to what works for you, stick to where your audience is, and yeah, that's where you'll kind of see the success, right?
Totally agreed. Well, I'm sure that you've had that experience. Has there ever been a platform that you've spent so much time dragging your feet because it's like, this isn't working, but then you shift gears and throw it into a different platform, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, like look who showed up, like you're getting engagement. Have you seen that with any of the clients or campaigns that you guys work on?
Yeah, I mean, all the time, right? Like some clients think like TikTok is the next big thing. Like this is where we need to be. And I'm like, okay, but like you're a mortgage broker. Like maybe, I'm sure you can think of some compelling content for a short period of time. But after that, like you just really need to think about, is that your audience is that their thing? And if it's not, then maybe we need to move over to LinkedIn. Like it's obviously going to work a bit better for you. And that's where we see the results. So I totally agree.
Yeah. If you are in a very boring business and let's say it's insurance or it's something that, people really don't gravitate towards because it's just not an interesting subject. And there's plenty of unsexy businesses out there. Then you're going to have to pay a lot more in order to get out in front of people. If you're edgy or if you have some form of content that is kind of related to your business that puts people on their heels or makes them say, hey, I don't always agree with that, I think it's a lot easier to not only get free press, but to stand out in what is normally a very crowded marketplace. And so this guy was, I think, the CMO of American Apparel. And they took what was a really small challenger company and turned it into a giant force because they put out so much material that was edgy or considered in some circles to be distasteful. And that was basically a version of marketing that, if you got morals and you got principles that say, I can't do this, I get that. But they turned what would be maybe a bit more of a challenging marketing play into something that they were getting so much free press that it was impossible to look away. So I really liked the little back and forth. It was only a minute clip, but I'll send it your way. I thought it was interesting.
Please do. We'll pop it in the show notes so that the listeners can take a look as well if they like. I want to kind of go back and touch on engagement for a second. Specifically, like what are some of the best ways to create engagement? Because we know inbound marketing can generate over 50% more leads than traditional outbound strategies. So how can brands build an online community that converts?
Really depends on the nature of the business and the product. I think that's like always the caveat in the answer. So I've had some success with different things. So like with a B2B play, software as a service specifically, to release imperfect or not quite the right solution to people in order to uncover whether there's intent and also get them to beg for whatever the solution is one of the most interesting plays that I've seen work at scale. So let's say I'm running, I don't know, one of the first companies that I came into was a hourly shift worker software platform. Not the sexiest thing in the world. So these are gym employees or people that work at restaurants or bars, hourly workers. And so creating a template that basically is made in Excel that is super cumbersome to work with and tedious to try to actually fill in is a very imperfect solution. And you put on your social media, hey, download our free template. You can get it. And people are commenting like, yeah, let me get this. You can reach directly out and say, yeah, no problem. Or you can also do this on your website with exit intent pop-ups. Either way, you give them a solution that they're not actually going to be able to use. Mm-hmm. And when they get frustrated, which inevitably they will because it doesn't solve their problem, even though they thought it might be able to, then you go, hey, this is actually what we do for a living here. We built an app for this so that you don't have to use a stupid Excel template. Let's talk about that. Here's the online calendar for my salesperson. Have a conversation with Daniel. And that seems to work really well, especially in a B2B space. I think it's a little trickier and it's a little longer in terms of the way that you would do that with B2C stuff.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I like that. That's a good tactic. One for the pop under my belt.
Cool.
On the opposite side of the coin, though, what are some outbound marketing tactics to use when businesses have little to no traffic?
Are we talking about outbound email marketing or are we talking social media marketing on outbound?
I mean, any and all is great. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Cool. Yeah. So it's part of the tool that I was describing earlier. I guess, 9 months in the making at this point. One of the hardest things to kind of solve for is like the three main things that need to be present when somebody's ready to buy. So like the first is like they need to actually have some form of a need. If they don't have the problem or it's not something that is within their world, then you're not going to be able to sell them. They have to have resources. So like if you can't pay me for my tool, I'm not going to be able to give it to you. And it has to be good timing. If it's something that is reticent and obvious at this moment that they need to solve because either the boss is on their back or it's something that they're putting out to the world saying, I have this issue, then it's a perfect time and place to actually get in there. Other times it's just not on their radar or they have a million other projects just like we all do. So you're not going to solve it for them. If you have all those three things present, then you should be able to reach out at the right time. So there are indicators in the market that tell you that. One of the biggest ones is job postings. So let's say I run a cybersecurity company, not the sexiest thing in the world. If I am trying to find new opportunities, I'm looking through job boards to see, hey, company XYZ just put out a notice for a cybersecurity specialist. If I'm reaching out to them, it's going to basically be a, look, hey, this is what I do. I have a turnkey solution. Instead of wasting all the time with having to find the right person, then onboard them, then 6 months later they leave and you still haven't solved your problem. We do this for a living. I'd love to have a conversation about it. That is a much smoother introduction and it works at scale. The other tail end of that is the way that you reach out. I think a lot of people screw up outreach, and I'm sure we both could check our inboxes right now and we have messages that are boilerplate, shitty looking templates that all look and feel the same that are never going to get our responses. So using memes, hyper-personalization, playful banter, all of those things give you an edge and put you in a much better light because it feels like it hasn't been a boilerplate template or something that you just like, here, you fucking read this. And I've had a lot of success with that. I think when I use a lot of these hyper-personalized templates with some liquid template type of capability, meaning if it goes to the CEO, we talk about one thing versus if it goes to another marketer, we talk about another thing. When you're combining all of these things together, you have a much more successful campaign overall. I think the way, and sorry, I'm just kind of ranting, but I dig this stuff. I think one of the things that I often get into these really interesting dialogues with either clients or my own employees is when they're like, oh, it didn't work. The campaign that we ran, it didn't perform. And my question is, well, okay, why? And if you start to break down in its simplest parts why something didn't work, I think there's always room for optimization, tweaking, updating, and changing. Like I've seen old school snail mail campaigns work better than anything else these days. Like sending a postcard in the fucking mail. Like that actually works because nobody's doing it. And depending on the messaging, yeah, it can really strike somebody in the right way. So yeah, I think long story short, outbound stuff is working. And for those that say that it is not working, yeah, they're probably not doing the right things. And they're not iterating. They're not doing any rapid experimentation. They're doing the same shit that everybody else has been doing. And therefore it's, yeah, surprise, it's not working. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sorry, really long answer, but...
No, super helpful answer, so thank you.
Sure.
While we're kind of on this topic of perception of like customers and potential leads, I know you've spoken in the past about using social proof to identify content that works. How does this beat out organic reach?
Yeah, well, so, I mean, they play together. Like, I don't think it's one versus the other. I always use like the phrase like, where does this exist in the wild? And some people have this weird hang up like, oh, you're stealing, you're copying. It's like, nope, definitely not. So like, let's say you run an engineering company, which is not a very exciting business to be in. And if you go into some of these groups, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook, you will find questions or posts that are getting a ton of engagement. And people are responding, and maybe there's some form of interaction there. If you're in that business, you should take that as verbatim, like this has worked in this channel. Therefore, why don't we tweak it, repurpose it, and wrap it in tinfoil, call it low fat, and push it out through this channel. So I use different tools to be able to discover what the highest engaged stuff is, whether it's on Reddit or Quora or Facebook groups or LinkedIn. And, you know, there's plenty of tools like BuzzSumo that allows you to see the top shares within, you know, whatever keyword you're looking up. That should be an indicator that this is working somewhere. And this, for whatever reason, this subject gets people all riled up. Let's try to test by pushing this out ourselves and seeing how the market responds. And if you do that at scale, I think you have something.
Yeah, for sure. I think, but you know, marketers often forget that like if you can post all the content in the world, but if it's not kind of what your consumers are asking for, or that like it answers the questions that they're like asking, it's not really going to convert or be all too relevant. So I think, yeah, like platforms like Ask the Public and BuzzSumo are really helpful for that.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's always a dance. And if all we did was sell all the time, I think people would lose interest in most products. So it's kind of this blend of giving value, providing some type of insights, changing perceptions, or at least questioning those that are in it, and constantly keeping people on their toes. If we always were just talking about how fucking awesome our product was, nobody would ever engage. And I'm sure you've seen it. You're in that industry. There are so many companies that are like, hey, we got to just write about how awesome we are. And it's like, dude, nobody knows who you are and nobody gives a shit. Like, it doesn't matter. So it's always this playful dance, you know, of kind of both sides, you know, providing value, insights, and something interesting to them.
Absolutely. So now that we've leveraged our social and online community, let's kind of look a bit further down the funnel. And I want to know, how do we optimize our incoming traffic to like create more conversions?
I mean, yeah, so conversion rate optimization is super. I don't want to be like, yeah, it's tons of fun. I think it's fun, but not everybody does. Yeah, lots of really basic things that can be done. So if we're just talking about landing page optimization, or maybe we just focus in on the homepage, I think above the fold is the most important area. And most people are like, no, we got to test shit that's like the red button, like down at the very bottom. It's like, dude, you're going to see so many more like actionable experiments, whether it's using Optimizely or Google Optimize, don't care. The idea is above the fold, you're going to see a significant change when you change anything up there. So if we change the hero image, fine. I think the most important thing is the single line that you're trying to describe what is the problem and how you remove a pain point, and basically whatever the subline is after that. I think a lot of people mess up by not doing a single line conversion. So basically just the email address. So the understanding is, oh, I'm just going to put in, yeah, I'll sign up here. Then you get into a second version of the form or a pop-up modal window that happens after that. So you catch them with one field, which is give me your email. And then it's like, hold on, I need more information. That way you can send people who abandon cart or abandon the entirety of the form a message like, hey, what happened? We almost did this together. I found that to work. And those are just little things. But to be able to test stuff at scale, Google Optimize gives you 5,000 impressions, which usually hits that 95 statistical significance point. So you can say with some level of certainty, if we change the button from blue to red, we have a 33% higher chance of converting every individual user. To me, that's fire. That's amazing. Like, you have people that normally would have left and now they're in your system, they're in your funnel. So I think little things like that are great. If we go into like what happens after the conversion, I mean, like, we can go down the rabbit hole. I'm happy to, but yeah, I think there's lots of different things within that initial conversion.
Perfect. Moving closer to home now, I want to know what have been some of your favorite success stories to come out of the work that you do over at Klint Marketing?
I don't know. I mean, like, there's lots of little wins. You know, the thing with marketing in general is that it's not a race, and there's no finish line. So, you know, it's so difficult to celebrate these little victories because there's always another mountain, there's always another hill. And so, you know, like, there's been really nice campaigns that we've run that were surprising from the standpoint of using memes on a business when they, you know, and a lot of B2B companies are very uptight about this is our image, we can't put memes. And then it's like, that's the greatest fucking post that you guys have had since your inception in 2012. You are welcome, sir. You know, like, that kind of stuff gets me jazzed up. And that's a really small thing. It's one little piece of content. I do think some of the ad campaigns have been really interesting. So I don't know. This is a little chip on my shoulder kind of thing, but the Danes, I'm in Denmark, the Danes like to hire Danes, and I am not one of them. And you could probably tell by the accent, I don't really come off like one of them either. So I get passed up on a lot of different deals, a lot of different opportunities. Half my clients are from outside of Denmark, even though I'm located right here. And so in many cases, we end up having to fix other agencies' problems, or they fucked up ad campaigns and put some intern who maybe had never heard of Facebook to run campaigns. And it's like, wow, you guys are dropping 1,500 kroner, an absurd amount of money, on every conversion through your platform. What are you doing? It's like, well, we've seen these guys around. It's like, cool, I'll fix it. And then we get the conversion rate down to something absurd, like 200 kroner. You know, it's a giant reduction. That's kind of like a really fulfilling moment of doing the right thing and getting to sit back and see this kind of chart of either rapid growth or, yeah, some type of change that was made that wasn't maybe the most complex thing, but had a major impact. I think that's maybe the part that I enjoy the most, not necessarily, you know, the onboarding of a new client, but getting to actually see something come alive and work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And in your 14 years, you know, in the industry, is there anything that still surprises you to this day when it comes to how successful these strategies are for businesses?
I don't want to go negative, but fuck it, I will. So, like, I am surprised that there are people within their 50s, 60s, and 70s that still have jobs within digital marketing. And I don't mean that, no, I mean that in like the most like simplest way. Like, if you are not able to use any of the tools that have been basically in the marketplace now for, last like 10, 15 years, but you have hung back on this, I'm a brander and storyteller, and you've risen up to such a high level in large organizations, but you have no real comprehension about how this platform or how conversions or how ROI works, like, that's crazy. You should not be in that position. I did a controversial talk, as you might imagine, controversial talk on this subject because I saw a really awesome article in Adage. It's this nice, like, I guess blog-ish kind of online news about marketing/ads. And this article was titled "Why Major Brands Are Ditching the CMO Job Title." And it was crazy large companies like Uber, Airbnb, McDonald's, Coca-Cola. All of them were getting rid of the chief marketing officer within the C-level suite, because you have people that grew up without the internet, entered the workforce without the internet, and didn't have the internet for another 10 years while they were in it, trying to say how they think, they feel, they believe that this is the way forward. And then you have some young hotshot that maybe grew up with an iPad in their lap that's sitting there and going, fucking data. Like, I have numbers to prove whatever your intuition or your ideas are, they're shit, numbers. And that is a very different world to live in and try to compete against. So I'm consistently running into it with some of my bigger clients, whether it's in the pharma industry or just some of the old school engineering industries that I keep tapping into, where it's like, who told you this still works? Like, the stuff that you wanted to come in and do for the next 2 quarters wasn't working in 2005. Like, what are we doing? And that's scary. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that consistently surprises me, is that some of the folks that are in these places where they could make some pretty awesome decisions and change the entire trajectory of an organization, they don't, one, because they want to play it safe, which is ridiculous, and two, they're so uninformed, they're uninitiated, and it's just crazy. It's like, you need to not be there. So yeah, that's the thing that really drives me nuts.
Understandably as well, so I'm with you there. My final question for you today, Taylor, and I can't wait to hear your insights, is what are your predictions for the future of marketing and social?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I did a talk it was 2019. I did lots of talks just before COVID. Then the world just went to shit. So at this event called Tech Festival, it was a lot of really warm and fuzzy stuff, where it was like, what's ethical marketing, or ethical design, or diversity, and all these really crazy topics. And I wanted to talk about how AI is going to break the internet. And that was a super different type of presentation. So this was before GPT-3 had been launched. Are you familiar with GPT-3?
No.
Okay, so that was this crazy thing, Elon Musk had developed the original GPT-2. And he was like, I can't release it because it will destroy the world. And then they had a reiteration of it, and then they quietly released it. And this is the basis for a lot of AI writers. And so you can look at some of the most well-known publishers out there, whether it's the Washington Post or the BBC, and they're already using AI writers without a human ever intervening or touching them. Think about sports reporting. Somebody fucking scored, somebody got a penalty, and this team won, this team lost. You don't need a human to write that, ever. So you're seeing this use case where less and less of what marketers are doing is being done by hand. And I think the people that are going to lose out in the long run, and of course there's always room for creativity, not saying that, but I am saying that the stuff that you can manually do today that will be automated tomorrow is no longer relevant. And in a world where everybody is able to shout at the top of their lungs and basically put out hundreds of pieces of content on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, it becomes impossible to be found or heard. So this is going to massively change the way that we look at marketing as we know it, because there's no way to break into an area when everybody's putting out auto-generated content, which means either you are paying to reach or your reach is just significantly smaller, and you're screwed. I think that for a little while does give rise to a focus on quality, which will be interesting. So a lot of really strong SEO people are really ranting about there's 200 SEO signals out there. You don't need to worry about any of that shit. Make something that's really thorough and really interesting and fun to read, and you'll scale. That's the way to do it. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting play, but I genuinely believe with machine learning, GPT-3, any of the AI tools, and check out appsumo.com. They're always releasing somebody's brand new pet project for literally $49. And I've been using these tools for a long time, and they're only getting better. So that's kind of my prediction is, more of the AI stuff is going to take less of, I guess, our time, but also less of, the effort.
Amazing. Well, before we wrap things up, we do have our rapid recommendations segment, which is where we find out what our guests have been loving and what they can't live without. Are you okay if I ask you some questions on that?
Yeah. Fire away. Let's do it.
Fantastic. So, Taylor, the first thing I want to know is who is one brand or persona that you think is getting social right at the moment?
From the standpoint of the content that they're putting out?
Whatever you think, however they've sort of caught your eye, we'd love to know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that, like, I don't know. I still meet people that are like, TikTok, that's for fucking kids. And it's like, what year is this? So I've been finding a lot of great stuff on TikTok. And yeah, so like there's a lot of brands that are putting out, they've found kind of this flow. You guys don't have Flow from Progressive Auto Insurance. So like they have basically a spokesperson that's like a young 20-something. That's been working really well. And I see a lot of that. I haven't found one person that's just killing it. But I can see why that consistency of having a single one person releasing all the brand content for a single very well-known brand works. I think some of the stuff that I'm consistently kind of sitting back and going, comes from this guy, Alex Hermosi. Super interesting dude, self-made kind of entrepreneur, American guy, bit of a character, but constantly releasing stuff that's, I would say, tight, but very thorough and yeah, really well made. So I think that's one person that I've definitely found really interesting.
Awesome. And the second question is, what's one valuable resource, event, or group that you think our listeners should know about?
When is this being released?
Next week, I think.
Okay. So So I'm going to be on a conference for growthhackers.com, but that'll happen on Tuesday, so I don't think this will be in time. I don't know. Like, so I used to go out to a lot of these big events, whether it was like Web Summit or Slush is a big one in Europe. You know, like these were, I never got to go to South by Southwest, but I heard it was a shit show. I don't know. I don't find those to be the most valuable use cases or moments in time. I think it's a lot of people that probably should have either been personal trainers or just gone to work for somebody else, but have kind of found some glimmer of hope in all the content that gets put out about, yeah, you gotta work, the hustle porn stuff that we see all the time. So yeah, I haven't found a lot of events where I'm taken aback about how amazing it was. It's just a lot of people tooting their own horns. I think what I've found is a lot of the kind of micro learnings that you take out of, again, some of the stuff on TikTok. I'm building. Do you ever use swipe files? Are you familiar with the term swipe file?
No.
So like I build swipe files, which are either spreadsheets or maybe you have it inside of an Airtable kind of situation, which is broken down through all the different pieces of either relevant content or templates or whatever the case is. So like I get super organized on this. And I've done that with TikTok, and like the craziness is it kind of pairs really well with the way that I build up my processes and briefs. So I've found that wherever you're getting your content, whether you're on kind of this gray hat area and you're in, Conquer or Black Hat World or Warrior Forum, like those are great spaces for finding some pretty amazing stuff. If you're just getting into the world of marketing, maybe your game is getting into TikTok, and I think there's some valuable stuff. Whenever I find something useful, I'm putting it inside of my swipe file. I haven't found an event that I'm like, this was worth every absolute moment of being there. Maybe because I have a super unrealistic standard. Like I go nuts on stage. Like this is pretty standard in terms of the energy level. It's just lots more slides. And yeah, I think if you're new to marketing and you're trying to get into it, yeah, any event is a step in the right direction because it's free learning and at least you're there, you're present, you're thinking about it. But yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't know. I find a lot of the big events to be kind of not a great use of time. So wherever you can find it elsewhere, if it works for you, then great.
Amazing. Thank you for that. That's all we've got time for today, but thank you so much for joining me, Taylor.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I hope I didn't rant too much or like this is too edgy for the audience. I have no idea. So I hope this was okay by you.
Of course, my favorite guests are the ones that enter passionate rants. It is my favorite thing to listen to, especially when it's about something you're passionate in. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or give us a follow if you're listening on Spotify. We'd love to hear what you thought about today's interview, so make sure you reach out on social media and let us know what you thought. Until then, we've been Giraffe Social Media. You've been amazing. We'll see you next time.